Hi and welcome to Jamie deRoy and Friends. Primary Stages Off-Broadway Oral History Project is a treasure trove of off-Broadway interviews. Over the years, Casey Childs and Sally Plass have interviewed so many of the composers. Well, here are some of those very special moments.
It was a four-person musical with wonderful songs that just spoke to me. It just spoke to me. Every song was a different little story, and it was about doors closing and new doors opening and not being afraid to go through those doors. There were songs about when our parents age and the roles reverse and the children then become the parents in a way. There were songs about relationships breaking up and new relationships forming. It was just a swath of songs about life. And many of those songs were actually very near and dear to me because I felt like I was going through those same stories. So I said to Richard and David at the end of the evening how much I enjoyed being invited and thanked them. And I said, you know, I really am moved by this evening of songs, and don't you think it could be a little show? I often say I don't know who was speaking out of my mouth because I don't know where I had the confidence to even say that. But they said, oh, well, what do you have in mind? I said, well, you know, I have no experience in theater, but I love this, and I feel if it's moving to me, it would be moving to other people. And there's a lot of joy in the songs. It just feels like something should happen with this.
We went to see Kismet at the Paper Mill Playhouse, and my babysitter was going to the High School of Performing Arts, and she was playing one of the three princesses of Ababoo. And I was in the second row, she had gotten us tickets, and out came Judy, all dressed up with eye makeup and all the stuff, and she winked at me in the second row. Shock! Not only was I shocked, but I thought, wait a minute, babysitters do this. Like I know that person. If my babysitter can do this. And then afterwards we went backstage and she introduced me to the fellow who played Haj the beggar, who was, you know, the Alfred Drake part, who was taking off his beard. And I went, oh, that's not your beard. You don't need a beard. You don't need a beard. And we saw the sets and everything, and it all came together at once at 6 years old going, wait a minute, people do this, I could do this. And that was it. And then I just bugged my parents daily that I wanted to be in show business, that I wanted to be an actor, that I wanted to perform, I wanted to be in Kismet, And then the Mouseketeers came on, so I wanted to be a Mouseketeer, and they had to send me down to Los Angeles. They have a talent rodeo every Tuesday, whatever it was, you know. And I was just single-minded about it. Till finally they said, look, if you're going to do this, you've got to study and blah, blah, blah. So I auditioned for and got into the High School of Performing Arts.
I heard that Balanchine was auditioning dancers for House of Flowers, the Broadway musical. And so I said, oh, well, I'll mosey around and go over there, which I did. And I took the first audition, and then I said, okay, so they told me that they were inviting me back to come back to the second audition. So when it's time for the second audition, I figured, oh yeah, okay, I'm going to get in there and I'm going to get in the back of the line so I can watch everything 20,000 times before it's my turn to do it. And what does Balanchine says? And Roy Van Scott, I want you to lead the line. I didn't even know he knew my name, but he pegged me from when I first came to that first audition. Because I'm this right body that he loved. And I'm like, what? And my mind said, kid, you either do it now or it's over. And so I came into the front of the line and did it, and I got the job. And that's how, when I got that job, who else is going to be in there? Arthur Mitchell.
That's an amazing group.
Louis Johnson, Jeffrey Holder, Carmen de Lavallard, Hugh Dilworth, Pearl Reynolds. I mean, it was the most extraordinary thing.
I auditioned in 1952 for a show called Can, written by Cole Porter. I came back 3 times, but they didn't take me anyway. And Cole Porter, he said, I'd like to see Mr. Finkel. And he took me privately. In those days, they had to carry him even then, you know. And he said to me, Mr. Finkel, you're a wonderful artist, he said. I see you at 2nd Avenue. I used to go down there all the time. As you notice, my music is in that minor key that I've adapted some of it from the Yiddish theater. You're a wonderful artist, but unfortunately, we have no part for you in the show. And naturally, you couldn't eat for the... I was very devastated that I didn't know what it all meant, a thing like that. I said, to hell with them. I won't audition for them. Let them burn with their theaters together. I was yelling and screaming. I didn't know what it was all about, being turned down like that, you know. And I didn't audition. I didn't care. I did what I had to do.
That was at the very same time. You were doing that show at the very same time that we were getting The Last Sweet Days of Isaac on at the East Side Playhouse. Remember, you weren't there
That's
for a lot of
right.
the rehearsals because
That's
you had
right.
to be over at 1776.
That's right.
And the cast came to see it one night and walked out
That's-
saying, "Don't give up writing."
Well, no.
Something like that. Remember, because
No, that was, Bill Daniels said that after
Yeah.
he read the script, not after they saw it.
oh,
He read my script
Oh.
and said, now, I don't think you should give up writing. But the implication was, you probably should. But the interesting thing that happened, the transformation with that show, is that Austin Pendleton was in it and Frederica Weber.
Now, this is the
The
last few days of Isaac.
Yeah.
We skipped over now.
our
as the time. We'll
second,
go-
our second
Well,
musical.
Okay, we'll go back to.
We'll go back to news. But I want to tell you about this because in rehearsal, things weren't working well. And because Austin hadn't quite found his footing for the role, he didn't have the self-confidence of that the character was supposed to have. And so the character seemed to be creepily insane. And people were not... did not
Comfortable.
understand it was funny and it wasn't comfortable. And in the previews, right up until the Sunday afternoon where the cast from 1776 came on a Sunday afternoon, right up until then, people were going out and saying, this is the worst thing I have ever seen. And Nancy and I were really thinking, well, we better just give up trying to write for the theater.
Being on stage with Zero Mostel was exciting and unpredictable and such a learning experience. You know, we did one bit of this. he didn't rehearse much, Zero, and there was one moment, or I didn't like it, particularly a part that he'd done for 40 years on Broadway, and I was doing again, and probably making a ton of money to do it. And he said, "Look," and there was one scene where Mother comes in upon Tevye praying, preparing for a Sabbath prayer. And Zero said, "Just follow me around. Just follow me around." So I followed him around, and my line was Reb Tevye, Reb Tevye, Reb Tevye, Reb Tevye, and he was continuing to pray. And he would become aware of what he heard, but I would just follow him. Now, the audience, and we never rehearsed it all the way through until we were in front of an audience. We're talking about 2,000-3,000 people, you know. And I followed him, and finally he, out of nowhere, whirled on me and yelled, "What is it?" And I recoiled. I mean, really, I was very flexible and literally bent almost, and it got a huge laugh. And as I inhaled to say my line, under his breath, he said, "Don't move. Don't move." And that's how I learned to hold for a laugh, you know? And that's how I learned that it's really important that when the audience is laughing, don't talk.
Yeah.
Don't talk.
I would learn about where you could go and audition. And so I auditioned for everything under the sun. And I auditioned for a club that was on 44th Street. And the girl got up in the middle of the room and sang. And one of them was Teresa Brewer, who later became a great star, and myself. And another girl that was much jazzier, and we sang every hour. And I sang there, and the bartender used to beat the guys off from getting near us, which was true, and that worked out fine.
Where was the club?
The club was 44th Street, right off Broadway.
Well, I got that job because of something else, and because I knew one of the producer, Arthur Whitelaw.
Oh, uh-huh.
and they were doing it, and they gave me the idea, sort of, not much of a script, but they gave me the idea. And I knew the Peanuts strip, and I knew all that sort of stuff. So I said, okay, that's fine. I read the idea and loved the idea of doing it, but I had some very strong ideas about what I thought would be the way to do it. And they said, well, no, we thought we'd just do it in the evening dress, tuxedos and dresses, and they would be. I said, they're playing these little kids. It seems to me, if you're going to do dress up, you better do something else. I mean, this won't do. And I, in all honesty, I said, so forget it. I won't do it then, if that's what you want to do.
I came right at the beginning, so I would go to box office to help out, and or I'd go to performances at the Sheridan Square Theater or stuff like that. But it was really the very beginnings. And then there were workshops with Megan Terry. Megan Terry started workshops there, and then for a play that was going to begin on 2nd Avenue at the very first La Mama. It was on the 2nd floor on 2nd Avenue. I can't remember 8th Street or a little. I can't remember exactly. And so I went to those workshops because I was interested. And I was sort of part of the whole group, but I wasn't except for sweeping the stage and box office or whatever. And then I heard Megan, so we were all in that little loft, and she said, I'm so pissed off, the composer left, I have no composer, what am I going to do? And so I had never in a million years thought, I'm a composer and I'm going to do that. And I said, what happened? What are you saying? You're looking for a composer? She said, yeah, he quit, he didn't want to work with me, blah, 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 blah. And I said, but really, very timidly, I hear my voice. I said, well, I'm a composer. So she said, what? That everything exploded. And that's how I started writing music. But it was everything in my life. I'm delighted with my life, because everything came the way it came. And so that's how that started. And then I was totally involved, every workshop and all that stuff.
Because actually the thing about me, and which some critics have even said, it's eclectic, because I have played with a symphony orchestra, and I played with a concert orchestra. So those are influences. I grew up in the church with gospel. My father played by ear blues piano by ear. I sat on the piano stool and watched him play. Hey, baby. Where did you stay last night? So that's why when he said, so he was hearing maybe the blues thing that he had heard in something. And because he wanted a bluesy sound. But it didn't mean that that's the only sound he had heard. Because when you say that, I know I really had a sound. And maybe that's why my stuff is different, because people have told me, and I've had people change my work because they think that I made a mistake. And then when I say no, and they sing it the way it's supposed to, I said, well, now it sounds like that's the only way it should go. But because they wouldn't expect, there's certain rules almost that people go by, and I might change that at it, which makes it different. I remember, what's in my, and it was just such a little simple thing, where they just changed the note because the normal chord change would be that change. And then when they find out it's something different, and it sounds just so, why did you change it, And that's what makes it different. That's what, Woody told me there was a sound, and somebody else told me they heard somebody playing
Let's go. Oh, it was what he told me. He said, and it reminded me so much of you. And then I found out the person had played in the played for a show of mine.
Oh.
Because he said, I don't know, there's something about his sound just reminded me of you. So sometimes you don't know yourself what your influence is on somebody else.
I started going to the theater very early. My parents, this first show I ever saw, I remember my mother took my sister and I, maybe it was the early years of grade school, I don't know, to see a revival of Victor Herbert's The Red Mill. And it was very significant because we were sitting in good seats down front, and the guy starts singing "Every Day is Ladies' Day with me," and as he sang it, I poked my mother. I said, "Mommy, look, he's looking right at us." Now, in later years, I became famous because I often had the actors stare straight into the audience. So, there you go. Then after that, I was taken to all the d'Oyly Carte opera productions when I was probably in high school still. And, but then I started going, and my grandmother had a subscription to the Theater Guild, which of course was the major serious producer of plays in those days. And I would go with her every Saturday to see a play.
The play is yours for about 10 minutes. You can do anything you want. You can bring in aliens, you can bring in alligators, you can have all your people do anything you want. After which, you are entirely a servant of what you've done in the first 10 minutes. From that moment on, you have freedom for 10 minutes, and then you're an acolyte. Then it's your job to be true to whatever you set up in your first 10 minutes, which I thought was pretty amazing and really true. Obviously, you have to know where you're going, and yes, you have to have a bigger design and all of that stuff. But your tone, quality, everything else, that's what you establish in the first 10 minutes. It's not unlike what Steve Sondheim says about musicals. Somebody asked him recently, Adam Gopnik asked him why musicals were so hard, and he said it's the first 10 minutes. They're hard because the first 10 minutes set up all of the rules of the evening, and then you've got to be true to them. First 10 minutes tell you everything you're going to get, where the story is going to go, and you have to know how to do that with efficiency and grace and not be obvious. I do have an ability to see the single line that goes from here to there, and that's sometimes, in fact, it's almost always the one thing that you have to have. It's one thing that's very hard to communicate to someone else. Someone else will not have that same vision, can't quite figure out why the road from here to there involves this and that along the way, but you know why it's there. And it's very hard necessarily to communicate it to someone else or to find someone else who sees it the way you see it. But when all is said and done, it is that, the line from beginning to end, that miraculously you see that is the thing that matters. Whether it's on a whole show or a song or a scene, being able to find that little elusive thing.
I saw something in the paper, I think both times, Jerry Herman had written this musical called Nightcap, and it was downtown. Downtown was off-Broadway, but I don't think they called it off-Broadway. It was in a little cabaret theater. So I walked in because they needed a replacement. I don't know if I saw it in a paper or someone recommended me, and I walked into a strange place. and I had a kerchief on my head, and I wore a strange outfit probably, and this was not the thing that you audition with, you know, an outfit like that. And Charles Nelson Riley was in it. So he saw me and said, "Who the hell is that? What is she doing here, Jerry? She's auditioning." So I auditioned, and I auditioned, and I auditioned, and he said, "I think he'll do." And that's how I got off Broadway.
Junior year, I think when I was a junior, and Charlotte, I forgot whether she was a junior or a senior, but she had gone to New York over the Christmas holiday. And when she came back, she sought me out, and she had an LP in her hands, and she said, "Sheldon, you of all people have to hear this." And it was Finion's Rainbow. And I listened to that, and it changed my life. Because as much as I had enjoyed writing, I don't think I ever thought of trying to do it professionally. But Yip Harburg's work in that show just was so delicious. I thought to try and create work like that, that would be a career worth following. I remember that there was a certain amount of off-Broadway reviews, and I tried to get songs in them. My brother had come to New York before me, and so he introduced me to various people. And as a matter of fact, one of my favorite stories, he said, "I'm doing a backers audition. You want to see it?" And I said, "Oh yeah, I've never seen a backers audition." So I went to the backers audition, and the score was by somebody I'd never heard of, but the score was just wonderful, the music and lyrics. And I'm listening to it and thinking, oh my God, if this is the work of unknowns in New York, I might as well go back to Chicago. So after the audition, he said, "I'd like you to meet the writer." And he said, "Steve Sondheim, this is my brother Sheldon."
I realized that there was a kind of theater that I liked and that I didn't like as much, another kind I didn't like. And the kind I didn't like as much was the kind that was the theater when I was growing up, which is a theater, a proscenium, a curtain that either goes like this or goes like this. You have what seems to be a real room. You have carefully hidden exposition, like on the phone or something. And then you have like a window with what I know is stage braces behind the door, and you have a tree out there and all of that. And the people all talk to each other, you know. And I thought there was another kind of theater I knew from Hyde and Payne. There's a kind of theater that admits that you're in the theater. And it doesn't take away from the reality. In fact, for me at least, it enhances the reality. To not pretend at literal reality, but at the theater of Shakespeare, the theater of Thornton Wilder, the theater of Bertolt Brecht, to some extent the theater of the Greeks. I mean, you know, it's like there's a kind of theater which was different. And that theater now is pretty much the old theater we talk about. It doesn't exist very much at all.
And once in a while, as a rather cocky youngster, I would come out of something like Peter Pan, whatever it was, and not knowing that possibly by then Jerry Robbins and Compton Green and Leonard Bernstein had done a musical version, I would say in the car as we were all going back home, you know, that should have been a musical. You know, they could have sung, well, Peter could have instructed them while he was teaching them to fly. Fly around the room, fly around the room. The only thing is you don't need wings to fly around the room. During the time that Julie and I were working on Mary Poppins, I was working as a production designer and costume designer.
For the movie.
And the movie, yes. Because I was their local Brit, I used to be invited by the Sherman brothers, who wrote the score of Poppins, to come in and listen to whatever they had just done, because they were doing some Winnie the Pooh pieces.
Right.
And Walt was sort of exploring whether he wanted to do, you know, to use Pooh as a subject matter, either for shorts or for a long film or whatever. And he was sort of making it as he had made Dumbo, which is to start off with a number of shorts and then gradually turn it into a feature. And I loved this. They had this little tiny office, the Sherman Brothers, with an upright piano, and I'd squeeze in there with them, and they would sing their newest song, you know, and they would sometimes ask me to sing it along with them so they could hear it in English, you know. And I loved all that. And eventually they said, would you consider being the voice of Prue? I said, I couldn't do that, I don't think. They said, well, we would love you. And we were thinking, and we've actually asked Walter if he would agree, if you would come with us at lunchtime tomorrow, and we'll do a couple of the songs with you singing to him. I said, I couldn't do that.